My own family drove me up that mountain road, handed me a backpack, and said, "See you never." What they didn't expect was me actually surviving what they planned. The silence hit me like a physical blow. One moment I was laughing with my hiking group, and the next, nothing but wind through pine trees and the echo of my own voice calling their names. They were gone. I stood there like an idiot, spinning in circles, shouting until my throat felt raw. "Jake, Sarah, anyone!" The mountains swallowed my words whole. Not even an echo came back to mock me. That's when reality started creeping in, cold and uninviting as a morgue slab. My phone? Dead zone. 0 bars. Not even that little SOS only message you sometimes get. The screen might as well have been a paperweight. Modern technology, ladies and gentlemen, useless when you actually need it. I held that thing above my head like some desperate attempt at summoning cell tower gods. Nothing. Then there's the daylight situation, which was becoming less of a situation and more of a countdown timer. The sun was dropping behind those massive peaks faster than my hopes of sleeping in my own bed tonight. Mountain shadows stretch long and dark, turning familiar trails into alien landscapes. What looked friendly and manageable at noon suddenly felt like the entrance to something prehistoric. But here's what really made my stomach drop: no gear. Nothing. They'd taken everything with them. The tents, sleeping bags, food, water purification tablets, even the stupid camp chairs nobody wanted to carry. I had my day pack with maybe half a granola bar, a nearly empty water bottle, and lint. Basically, I was equipped for a grocery store run, not wilderness survival. The temperature thing? Well, that's where mountains really show their personality. During the day, you're sweating through your shirt, thinking this place is paradise. Come nightfall, Mother Nature flips the script entirely. These elevations can drop below freezing even in summer. Without proper gear, hypothermia becomes less of a medical term and more of a personal appointment you definitely don't want to keep. I tried retracing our steps, hoping maybe they'd just taken a wrong turn. Maybe this was some twisted joke that would end with everyone jumping out from behind rocks, laughing about how scared I looked. The trail seemed different though. Everything looked the same. Rocks, trees, more trees. GPS without signal is just expensive confusion. My watch showed 6:30 p.m. Sunset was maybe 2 hours away, possibly less with these peaks blocking everything. The smart move would be finding shelter, but where? These weren't friendly camping grounds with convenient fire pits and bathroom facilities. This was raw wilderness that didn't care about my comfort level or survival odds. The weird part is how quiet everything gets when you're truly alone. No human voices, no car engines in the distance, no familiar sounds of civilization, just wind. Occasional bird calls, and the sound of your own breathing getting a little more panicked with each passing minute. Darkness was coming whether I was ready or not. The real test would begin once that sun disappeared completely. Darkness hits the mountains like a slap to the face. One minute you can see the trail ahead, the next you're squinting at shadows that could be rocks or bears. My first priority wasn't finding food or water, it was staying alive until morning. I grabbed every branch I could find. Dead ones work better than green ones because they're lighter and easier to break. Pine needles became my mattress, leaves turned into blankets. The shelter looked pathetic. Honestly, like something a kid would build in their backyard and abandon after 10 minutes. But here's what most people don't realize. Your body loses heat 25 times faster when you're touching cold ground directly. That sad pile of branches suddenly felt like a 5-star hotel. Hypothermia sneaks up on you below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Your body starts shutting down non-essential functions to keep your vital organs warm. First you shiver uncontrollably, then you stop shivering altogether, which is actually the dangerous part. When your body stops fighting the cold, you're in serious trouble. Then there's the soundtrack of mountain nights. Every crack, rustle, or distant howl makes your heart race. Coyotes hunt in packs, and they're surprisingly bold when they're hungry. Bears? Well, they're basically walking tanks with an attitude problem. I wasn't about to become someone's midnight snack. The weird part is how your mind plays tricks on you. I kept hearing voices, footsteps, even car engines. Sleep deprivation kicks in fast when you're running on pure adrenaline and fear. But I had to stay alert. Rationing energy becomes this delicate balance. You need enough awareness to detect danger, but you can't burn through your reserves like a race car engine. Let's not forget the cold math of survival. 80% of lost hikers get found within 48 hours. That statistic kept me going. 2 days. I just had to make it 2 days, and someone would probably find me. The trick was believing those numbers applied to my situation. My makeshift shelter held together better than expected. Body heat trapped between the branches created this tiny pocket of warmth. Not comfortable, but survivable. Every hour felt like 10. I'd count seconds to pass time, then lose track and start over. The mountain doesn't care about your schedule or your comfort level. Morning couldn't come fast enough, but when the first rays of sunlight finally broke through the trees, I felt something I hadn't expected. Hunger. Real, gnawing, impossible to ignore hunger. My stomach felt like it was eating itself from the inside out. Survival experts always talk about the rule of threes. 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Makes sense, right? But they don't mention how quickly your body starts demanding all three when you're completely alone in the wilderness. That first night taught me one crucial lesson. Staying warm was just the beginning. Now I had to find the essentials that would keep me alive long enough for that 80% statistic to work in my favor. Morning came with my stomach making sounds like an angry bear. Funny how your body reminds you what matters most when everything else gets stripped away. Water first, then food, then fire. That's the survival trinity. And I needed all three fast. The stream I'd heard trickling nearby turned out to be my lifeline. Clear mountain water looks pure, but looks can kill you. Giardia and other nasties love hanging out in pristine wilderness water. Well, I didn't exactly have a water purification tablet collection in my back pocket. Boiling was my only option. The good news, heat kills most germs and parasites within minutes. The bad news, I still needed that fire. My hunger wasn't waiting for proper etiquette. Ever eaten a grub? Neither had I until that moment. Flipping over rocks and logs revealed a buffet of protein-packed insects. Crunchy on the outside, surprisingly nutty flavor. Makes sense when you realize bugs are just land shrimp, right? Desperate times make everything taste better than expected. But fire remained the real game changer. Without it, I was just a shivering human waiting for hypothermia to set in. I'd watched enough survival shows to know the flint and steel method, but finding actual flint proved trickier than YouTube made it look. Eventually, I discovered some quartzite rocks that threw decent sparks when struck against my belt buckle. The tinder needed to be bone dry. Mountain mornings bring dew to everything, making fire starting feel impossible. Then there's this trick most people don't know: look for bird nests. Old ones, obviously. Birds are expert engineers when it comes to dry, fluffy material. I found some abandoned nest remains and mixed them with shredded bark from a dead birch tree. Strike, strike, strike. My knuckles were bleeding by the time those first sparks caught. Then there is that magical moment when smoke appears and you're blowing gently like your life depends on it. Because it does. One tiny ember grew into flame, flame into fire, fire into hope. Wild berries became my next obsession. Rocky mountainsides hide surprising treasures if you know where to look. Here's something that might save your life someday. About 90% of wild berries are safe to eat if they're not bitter. The bitter ones? Nature's warning system telling you to back off. I found some elderberries and wild raspberries that tasted like victory. Fire does more than cook food and purify water. It signals for help. Smoke during the day, bright flames at night. Rescuers scan for both. My little campfire suddenly felt like a beacon broadcasting my location to anyone paying attention. The weird part is how quickly you adapt to eating things that would have disgusted you days earlier. Survival strips away your pickiness faster than anything else. Every calorie becomes precious fuel for whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. Speaking of challenges, the weather was about to test everything I'd learned about staying alive. Day 3 hit me like a brick wall. The morning started calm enough, birds chirping, sunlight filtering through the trees, me feeling almost optimistic about my chances. Then the sky turned dark gray in about 15 minutes flat. Rain doesn't just fall in the mountains, it attacks. Within an hour, water was pouring down the rocky slopes like someone had opened a massive faucet above my head. I huddled under a small overhang, watching streams form where there had been dry ground minutes before. That's when I heard it. A deep rumbling sound that definitely wasn't thunder. About 50 yards uphill, rocks started rolling. Small ones at first, then bigger chunks following behind them. The wet soil couldn't hold everything in place anymore. I scrambled away from my little shelter just as a basketball-sized boulder crashed exactly where I'd been sitting. Makes sense why they call them landslides. The whole hillside just decided to slide somewhere else. But here's the weird part. Almost getting crushed by falling rocks actually gave me an idea. I found a hollow piece of branch and carved one end into a point. Blowing through it created this incredibly loud whistle sound that echoed off the canyon walls. Every survival expert will tell you the same thing. 70% of rescues start because someone heard or saw a signal from the lost person. So I started a routine. 3 sharp whistle blasts, wait 30 seconds, repeat. The sound carried much farther than my voice ever could. Between signaling sessions, I studied the landscape around me like my life depended on it, which it did. The mountains formed a rough V-shape to my east. A ridge ran north-south about 2 miles away. The stream I'd found earlier seemed to flow toward a gap between 2 peaks. Mapping everything in my head became crucial. Getting more lost wasn't exactly an option at this point. Well, turns out I wasn't the only one paying attention to sounds in the area. Around sunset, I heard something moving through the brush. Heavy footsteps, deliberate and slow. My first thought was bear, which would have been bad news for someone armed with nothing but a pointy stick. Then there is the fact that bears don't usually announce themselves by stepping on every twig within a half-mile radius. I climbed the nearest sturdy tree and waited. 20 minutes later, a massive elk wandered into view, just looking for water, completely uninterested in the weird human hiding above. Still, that encounter reminded me why moving during daylight hours made more sense than stumbling around after dark. The rain finally stopped around midnight. Everything smelled fresh and clean, but I was soaked through and shivering. My whistle had gone silent hours ago, no point disturbing every nocturnal animal in the forest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but I had a plan forming. Following that stream downhill might lead somewhere useful. Most water eventually finds its way to civilization, right? By the 4th day, I'd made up my mind. Follow the river downhill. Rivers always lead somewhere, and somewhere meant civilization. My hiking boots felt like they were made of concrete now, every step sending sharp pain through my blistered feet. But pain meant I was still alive, right? The sound of rushing water became my compass. I stumbled along the rocky banks, grabbing onto branches when the terrain got steep. My stomach had stopped growling hours ago, apparently even it had given up hope of a decent meal. The weird part is how your body just adapts to running on empty. Then I heard it. The distant hum of engines. Not the occasional buzz of a single car, but the steady drone of traffic. Real traffic. My heart nearly exploded out of my chest as I pushed through the last stretch of dense brush, branches scraping my already torn jacket. There it was, a 2-lane highway cutting through the valley like a beautiful black ribbon. I could have kissed that asphalt. Cars were actually driving by, real people heading to real places with real food and warm beds. The contrast hit me hard. 4 days ago, I was one of those people, completely oblivious to how precious normal life really was. I flagged down the 3rd vehicle, a pickup truck driven by an older man who took one look at my condition and immediately pulled over. "Jesus, son, what happened to you?" he asked, already reaching for his phone. I gave him the short version while he called for help. Dehydration, exposure, abandoned by my hiking group. He didn't need all the gory details. Let's not forget the paperwork nightmare that followed. Police reports, medical evaluations, insurance claims. Everyone wanted to know about the people who left me behind. Here's the thing though. I never filed charges, never even gave their names. Some battles aren't worth fighting, especially when you've already won the only one that mattered. The doctor said my feet would heal in a few weeks. The blisters were impressive, apparently. But the mental shift, that's permanent. Survival situations don't just test your body. They rewire your brain completely. You start seeing people differently, trusting differently, planning differently. Most survival stories end exactly like mine. 90% of people who reach civilization make it home safely. But reaching that point changes everything about how you view the world. I never saw those so-called friends again. And honestly, good riddance. Anyone who abandons you in a life-threatening situation wasn't really a friend to begin with. The mountains taught me something those people never could. Self-reliance isn't just a skill, it's a superpower. When you know you can survive anything nature throws at you, human drama starts looking pretty manageable by comparison. 4 days in hell taught me more about strength than 4 decades of comfortable living ever could. Sometimes the worst experiences give you the best gifts. I walked into those mountains as someone who needed others to feel complete. I walked out knowing I was enough all by myself.